you and escape from it. But what it allows you to do is to see God's glory in the midst of it all, a glory that not only saves the world, but lifts you up too. In order to do this, though, we need to have an obedient heart. And I started the reflection today, earlier this morning, with what is obedience? And obedience, Christian obedience, is this radical listening to the word of the Father, receiving that word in our heart in a manner that challenges all of our judgments, so that instead of seeing the world through our eyes, which are subject to death, we see the world through the resurrected eyes of Jesus. And when we see the world that way, when we take on God's perspective, when we have God's judgment about what is good, pleasing, and true, as St. Paul says in Romans chapter 12, as we do that, what happens is we have, on one hand, we're purified, our judgments are purified, meaning healed. Purification is another word for healing. So we have inner healing in ourselves. We're able to forgive and to seek forgiveness. We're able to ask God to teach us how to forgive. Even if we suffer from a lot of bitterness, we all of a sudden have a freedom. Jesus, I know I suffer from bitterness. Help me learn to forgive anyway. Help me to learn how to intercede for my persecutor. Help me to have compassion for the person who torments me. Help me know this freedom of the son and daughter of God. That kind of freedom of life that comes from being healed inside also opens up and makes life a lot more intense. All of a sudden, every moment, there's no mundane, banal moments to your life. Everything is charged with rich meaning and beauty, something that is so heart piercing. This present moment can't hold it. It's not big enough for it. You feel like every moment's going to explode when you live life with the Lord. There's an intensity to it and a beauty to it. There's heartbreaks and sorrows, and there are joys, and there are moments of thanksgiving and wonder that you could never possibly have imagined. This is what obedience opens up. Paradoxically, obedience opens up a pathway of Christian freedom, the freedom to live a life filled with love and meaning. Her obedience, Mary's obedience, is the prototype of every future instance of Christian obedience, which draws its whole meaning from the life of prayer and the perception of God's will. For Mary, however, God's will in its certainty has not yet become apparent. This is before the angels appeared to her, or has the angel, before he's announced to her what she is to do. It's what God is asking of her isn't yet known. I would say that as we live our Christian life, that we also find ourselves, when we first come to know the Lord and we know that he's come to save us. We know that he wants to heal us. We know that he's forgiven us. We've gone to the sacrament of reconciliation. We've received his body and his blood. His life fills us. But now, Lord, that you have filled my life, now that you are so present to me, now what do you want of me? How can I respond to you? What are you asking of me? And this is where Mary was when the angel appeared to her. She was still waiting for the declaration of this will. She is ready in prayer to accept it, even if she does not know what she will be accepting. She knows perfect indifference, and whoever among the generations of future Christians know about the meaning and extent of indifference will owe this knowledge, most of all, to the mother. And so this is an aspect of obedience that is very, very critical, and that I want to kind of close this particular conference with, and that is the obedience characterized by a certain indifference to everything that is not the will of God. Um, I'm not indifferent to my neighbor and their plight. I'm not indifferent to the obligations that I have in my state in life and those who are entrusted to my care. I'm not indifferent to my own needs and self-care. I'm, uh, I'm very aware that my body and my life are a gift from God, and so I need to take care of my life. I need to take care of my body. I'm aware of all these things, so that's not an indifference from that kind of thing. That would be a form of indifference for another world religion. In Christian indifference, we treat everything we've received as a gift from God, and how you treat the gift is how you treat the giver. And and this includes our own lives, our own bodily existence, our own fleshed existence. However, um, we live in a world where there are many, many good things that we can choose all the time. And as we begin to live the Christian life, uh, it's obvious that we should choose the good and not the evil. That's obvious. Sometimes we don't always know what is the good, but and sometimes we can even get mixed, think that something evil is good, but that's more momentary, and eventually we figure that out. Our desire is to choose what is good. But as you mature, there's a difference between choosing good things and choosing from among these good things what God wills us to do, that good thing that God wills. And Mary is the one who shows us the perfect openness, the active receptivity, the indifference that we need to have to every good thing that is not God's will for us. When we know what God's will is, we grab that thing and we pursue it with the fullness of our life and put all our energy into it with the happiness and joy of knowing that this is what God has disclosed to us as worthy of laying our life down for. Um, but not every good thing in this world is worthy of the gift of our life. Not every um, not every situation or person is worthy of the gift of our life. But that person that God has chosen to us, that state of life that God has called us into, that community where God has asked us to take our stand, to speak the word of truth, to become the fiery icon of his love, that place that God has sent you, that's, if you choose that, that is what's going to give him glory. And that is what's going to help you live life to the full. And we know that if we begin to offer our bodies even here and now as a living sacrifice to the Lord, in other words, offer everything we have, all our most noble aspirations, surrender them to the Lord in sacrifice and in love of those that he's entrusted to our care and in devotion to him. He will show us, he'll renew our minds, he'll transform our lives, he'll show us what is his will, what is good, pleasing, and perfect. Mary came to know this because she had that active receptivity, that humility, that indifference that informed her obedient, listening heart to the word. Well, with that, I better stop my share just for a moment. And what we have, for those of you who know the Zoom features well, you'll know that there's a little chat box that you can type things into. And what I would invite you to do is if you have any questions that you would like me to answer to throughout the presentations today, you are invited to submit them in the chat box, and I will periodically stop and try to answer some of the questions that you throw out. And if you wanted to just direct something to me privately, it's not a question you want the whole group to know about. You can also, you'll see in the chat box, there's a feature that allows you to send me a private message, and I'm happy to try to respond to those the best I can too. Um, but for now, if I invite you, you also have a feature that allows you to raise your hand. And so I invite you to do that if you want as well. And I'll try to respond to raised hands periodically. With that, though, I don't see any questions coming up. Sister Christine Marie, would you, uh, or Sister Vincent, would you give everyone the possible, could you give everyone some directions concerning the liturgy today?
Sure, Dr. Lillis. This is Sister Christine Marie. Our Holy Mass will be at noon. You will have received in the invitation a little packet. It gives the Mass readings along with the entrance antiphon. So as soon as Dr. Lillis is finished with this segment, we'll be going on break, and we'll be coming back at noon for Holy Mass.
Very good. Thank you for that. And Sister Christine Marie, I uh, I'm so grateful to the sisters again for hosting this. Someone asked how I say my name. So I'm Dr. Anthony Lillis, and I'm the academic dean here at St. Patrick's Seminary in Menlo Park. I grew up in Santa Cruz, California, so I'm a local from the area here, for those of you who are also in the Bay Area. And it's I worked many years in Denver, raised our children in Denver, and now all my children are young adults. And then we came out to California about 6 years ago, and last year moved out here to the Bay Area. And most of my work has been dedicated to priestly formation. So I help form seminarians to become priests. So that's a little, some of you asked about that. And so Anthony Lillis, and I appreciate you coming and joining me for prayer. One of you asked, to choose from the good things what is God's will for you sounds so easy, but any insights that you can give in discerning what of the good things are God's will? Um, I I think that one of the a couple of the things before being able to really discern God's will, I think living the Christian life for a little while is very important. And by living the Christian life, I don't mean I don't mean simply living a good enough life, but trying to live the Christian life to the full, which means, you know, going to mass as frequently as we can and going to confession frequently, like, you know, once a month if we can, or more, going to praying the rosary and having a prayer time every day, maybe spending, 30 minutes to an hour in prayer, reading the sacred scriptures, learning the scriptures by heart, listening to good teaching. These are all things that we can do to begin to open up our heart to the will of God. Then the other things that we can do are in our families and parishes and communities, but these corporal and spiritual works of mercy. So being a catechist, for example, or helping your parish prepare for liturgy, especially in COVID, where all these extra protocols sometimes call a lot more preparation. Well, it requires people to do stuff, and so maybe you could spin yourself. But then there are also soup kitchens and homeless shelters and other volunteer opportunities where you can give yourself. It's not like you need to go out and carefully discern, is this God's will for me to work in the soup kitchen? If the soup kitchen is next to you, you feel prompted in prayer, go do it. And if it's not the right thing, God will soon make that known to you. But just serve and love where you're planted and what God has given you to do. As you live like that for a time, learning the faith, entering into prayer, serving those that God has put in around you in the right here and right now, then your heart becomes more attentive to God's will, His special purpose for you, and you learn how to respond to it in a deeper, richer, and more beautiful way. So that's my answer for the practical things is just start with what's closest to you in God's providence. He planted you exactly where you are. Begin to order your life in very practical ways towards God. Do uh, uh, do good and love those who are right around you, and live a life of prayer. And in the silence of your prayer, God will begin to prompt you in beautiful ways. Um, okay, well, it's 10:30. I need to break, and there's uh, um, I am praying for you, and I will be actually at a live mass here where I'm at St. Patrick's, but my live mass happens the same time as yours. So happy feast of the of Our Lady of Guadalupe. I hope her graces bless your life on this day of retreat. God bless you. We'll come back after lunch.